Um, yeah, so thanks a lot for coming along. I'm Chris Spalton. That's my Twitter handle if you want to connect to me. Yeah, as was just mentioned, I'm a UX and product designer at a place called Redgate Software. Currently, we design really technical enterprise tools for really technical people, so database admins and things like that. We help them control all their data and data protection and stuff like that. So it's not very exciting and shiny, but it's complex problems, and I quite enjoy that. I enjoy that. So I'm also a sketchnoter, as we just spoke about. I'm also a comic book author, which I'll go to in a bit, and I'm also a hypocrite. And I want to make that clear because, as we just touched on there, it's a bit. This talk is a bit of a kick up the arse for me as well as anybody else. I think I'm, we're all going through peaks and troughs with COVID. This talk was written a while ago. I actually did it at a session in Manchester a while back, and it's kind of like, the current situation and looking at the news and things like that. I think I've been personally feeling a bit like my mojo has kind of, dipped down over the last couple of months. So when Joanne contacted me on Twitter and said, do you want to do a talk? I was like, well, actually, I can pull this talk out and reflect on it and what it means now to almost try and inspire myself again. And if it helps any of you guys, then that's also great. So as I was talking to Kim earlier, it's almost like I feel like it's a bit like that situation where you get on a plane and the stewardess says, if the air masks drop down, make sure you put yours on first and then you can help anybody else. So whilst it's perhaps like the selfish perspective, I hope you get something from it. A lot is going on, right? That's what I can say. A lot is going on. We're all in different situations. There's obviously the virus. There's all the stuff in America. There's the Black Lives Matter protests and all those kind of things. And the COVID. And I think it's hard to understand. We're overloaded. And like I said, I've personally struggled really. I've got some health problems. I keep having kind of migraines and stuff. And it's trying to kind of, and whether that's anxiety driven and all these things, it's kind of just like, I wanted to, as I mentioned, I wanted to refresh myself, but hopefully I think the key to all this is social media. And if we scroll Twitter, I spend a lot of time on Twitter and it's just sort of bad news and bad news and bad news. But I think there's an opportunity there for people to support each other. And if we can do that, then maybe we can come out of this in a slightly different world, but in a better place on some sort of human level, rather than necessarily work or anything like that. And hopefully, what the things I touch on here are a bunch of lessons that I've learned before COVID. And like I said, I need a kind of reminder of it myself, but maybe we need to look at the world in a different way and look out for each other in slightly different ways than what we have done. But the start of that is being able to get your stuff out. Okay. So it used to be called, trigger warning maybe, it used to be called you're going to die and no one's going to give a shit. And that came from a place where I had several experiences of family members and friends dying, simultaneously seeing people not having the confidence to put their ideas out there. So my uncle died, I had a friend who committed suicide, I had another friend that went to bed and just didn't wake up, and that kind of inspired me to write the talk the first time around. And then that kind of rode a bit of a crest, and then it got to here, and again, all the news and what's happening now kind of dampened it back down again. And maybe it is time to pull this out and hopefully give people a bit of reassurance that your ideas have validity, or whatever the right word is. A lot of this stuff comes from this book, not necessarily this stuff, but this book I got a few years ago, which you may have seen it before. It's a New York bestseller by a guy called Austin Kleon, who blogs and writes on Twitter and stuff like that. And it was just, I read this book a few years back, and it really did it resonated with me. And for want of a better phrase, it kind of changed my life in the way I approach things. And what I'm going to take you through now really is some of the lessons from here with my own spin on them and how I adapted them and what the results of that were. And that kind of gave me this confidence that yes, my ideas do have validity, etc., etc. People talk like creativity is a muscle that needs exercising, which is true. If you do something, you get better at it. That's obviously a fact. If you draw more, you'll get better at drawing. If you write more, you'll get better at writing. But I also think the key to creativity is actually having confidence that your ideas are worthwhile and worth putting out. And I think that's the actual blocker, not skills to people. We spoke about my sketch notes earlier. If you look at my sketch notes as a thing, they might look quite good. If you look at any individual element of them, they're really simple drawings and really simple ideas that I'm capturing, but it's the confidence that that's valid to put out into the world that is actually the unlocker to connecting with people and things like that. And I think the world is a better and more interesting place with your ideas in it, right? All of your ideas in it, everybody that's on here, unless you're a racist, a Nazi, a homophobe, or a dickhead, in which case you can keep your ideas to yourself. And I'm happy to debate that. But generally, enlightened people, such as the NUX community, I think there's a lot of ideas out there. Maybe some of you have thought, oh, I can't put them out there, or whatever else, you're struggling with it. We need to, the world now than ever needs sound people to get their ideas out there, because racists, homophobes, Nazis and dickheads have no fear of putting their ideas out there. So maybe we can reclaim it, and that's part of connecting with each other again on a Twitter is a bin fire 99% of the time, right? And you have to find the people that are sound and share the same values as you in order to progress and collaborate. So we need to do that. And if you've got ideas and you're a sound person, then you should be adding your voice to it in a positive way. But there seems to be a bunch of blockers. And this comes from conversations with my friends and colleagues and stuff like this, that people don't feel that they can do this. And some of it is that they don't feel that their skills are good enough. Maybe it's stuff like, maybe you're into, I don't know what, crocheting or like cross stitch or whatever. It doesn't matter what it is, but you go and try and find those communities online, and there's people that are experts at it, and like their stuff looks amazing, right? And I have this with artwork and drawing and stuff, and it's like it's really inspiring to you, because it's like, wow, look at that amazing art. But there's also a blocker there of, well, I'm never going to be that good, so why should I even bother trying, sort of thing. I can't put out my first drawing when someone's creating this amazing piece of artwork, because I'll just get judged and mocked for it. Another thing might be that you're not allowed. It could be that you want to share some process from your work or something like that, but you're maybe work under an NDA, or maybe you work for a business. I used to work for an insurance company, as we mentioned. They were very secretive. I wouldn't have been able to share any of my polished work out of that, because they're like, oh no, we know we need our competitive advantage. Sometimes you don't have time, right? We all got busy lives. Maybe COVID has, for example, reduced my commute, so I've got some time back from COVID, but I appreciate that has an impact on other people's lives, such as you've got your kids running around all the time and you don't have that separation and stuff. Likewise, I think a lot of people, this probably doesn't necessarily relate to the NUX community, because obviously UX could be considered a creative field, but a lot of people think that they're not creative. And so no one cares what I do, because I've just got some sort of regular job, whatever, work in an office, kind of regular. And other people think I don't know how to even start. Like, it's, if you're not on social media in any sort of way, or writing or doing anything like that, it's a bit of a tricky one to know how to even start, right? So I'm going to go through these and hopefully, I'll talk about the lessons I've learned on it and some of the stuff I've done as a result of that. And hopefully, yeah, you can take, if any of these resonate with you, then hopefully you can take something from that, basically. So the first one is, I'm not good enough. The thing is about it all is, being good isn't even enough anyway. I think you have to be findable. What I've learned is, being good, you can aim to be good, but if you do enough bad things in order, not bad, but if you do enough things at your level in order, then that just becomes your style anyway. And you have to put it out there. The world that we're in now, it's like, if it isn't online, it doesn't exist. I've got a friend called James Dow, who's an incredible artist, like really amazing artist, and he creates all these bits of artwork, but he doesn't do social media. He's like, no, I'm not going on Twitter. Twitter's full of dickheads, right? And it's like, he was out of work for years, and no doubt his work helped him with his well-being and things like that, his artwork, but no one can see it. And he had a whole career there as an artist waiting. His housemates, they're only going to buy, he lives in a shared house with 3 or 4 of my other mates. They're only going to buy so many prints of him, because they can just walk into his bedroom and see them anytime, right? But people would definitely buy his prints. But because he doesn't do social media, no one even knows that he even exists. And I just think that's a terrible kind of he hasn't taken that leap to connect with people and show his stuff, and therefore he's losing out on something that could be a really lucrative and a really enjoyable career for himself. You don't also need to be a genius, right? Which is good, because you're not one. No offense. Maybe there is one or two of you out there. I don't know you guys, but the chance of you actually being a genius, this bar that like, oh, I have to, for anything, for me to share anything, it has to be perfect. It's just, you know, it's a false blocker. Like, or I need to be ready. I need to be the best at this before I share anything. It's just, it's only holding you back. No one else cares whether you're the best at it. It only holds you back. And people like Einstein and whoever, Leonardo da Vinci or whatever, they only come around, you know, once every 200 years. So the chance, you might be very good at what you do, but the chance of you actually being the best in all of the world at what you do and not wanting to share anything until that time is just a falsehood. And like I said, you're only holding yourself back there. Instead of worrying about being a genius, what you need to do is find your scene, EOS, right? So I don't know if you know these guys. These guys are bronies, and there's a whole community out there. These are grown men that dress up like these furry My Little Pony or unicorns or whatever, right? And they roam around, and they have a wicked time. They have big conferences at hotels and things like that. And what they've done is they've found their community and they have a great time. But somebody, I don't know who the guy was, somebody was the very first brony, right? So he used to sit at home by himself, dressing up like this and doing whatever he wanted to do like this. But at some point, he took the plunge and said to one of his mates, he was like, I'm going to do this, and said to his mate, I like dressing up like a My Little Pony. Do you want to do it as well? And his mate was like, yes, I do. I've been waiting for someone to say this because I've been nervous about it the whole time as well. So let's do that and connect. And then we'll form this brony community, right? And if these guys, they're probably, I'm sure they're all well-adjusted, lovely men, but it's like, if these guys can find a community, if you're into watercolor art or UX design or animation, you can definitely find your community to contribute to, right? So it's like, you don't have to be that, you don't need to kick the door in and be like, I'm the best person at this. You just need to find that group of people that you can start contributing to ideas to. From then on, like, it kind of rolls on, and the ideas, like I said earlier, it's sort of like that idea that creativity is just you just need to find people who will tell you that, yes, your ideas are valid or worthwhile something, and keep going. They don't need to be the best ideas or groundbreaking ideas. Creativity is always a collaboration anyway, and I think we've reached that kind of tipping point where there's no sort of original ideas anymore. Every idea comes from a combination of other influences, right? And whether it's the music that you listen to or the colleagues that you work with or whatever, creativity and creating new things is always a mixture of that kind of stuff. I think the days of, you know, being the kind of tortured genius sat in your attic waiting for the lightning strike are gone. So the collaboration, the conversation is the key part to creativity now, I believe. And it's the community aspect of it and all those kind of things. It's hearing and seeing other viewpoints that can build up into you finding your spot in it all, right? And creating something in that gap, but from influenced by the other thing. You don't need to be the smartest person, thank God. You don't need to be the most talented person, thank God. But everybody can contribute, whether you're a beginner, like that, in terms of UX, right? Let's say you could be super senior designer at Spotify or wherever, you know, one of these sort of real high ticket brands that people work for. You could be a super senior designer there, or you could be an intern. I've had an intern start with me this week, right? And he's already contributed ideas. And it's because, like, everybody can do that. It doesn't matter where on the scale you can. You've all got a individual history and a background and your story to tell and your perspective on it. So that's how you can contribute and collaborate from there. And I think as long as you come across like your heart is in the right place and you're trying to contribute to the discussion, you'll be all right. And you're going to mess up, right? Like, when the Black Lives Matter stuff happened, I thought, how can I help? I really want to help. I did things like donate to bail funds and I contributed to the other stuff. But I was like, I really want to help with the skills that I've got. And I put a shout out saying, if there's any black designers that I can help mentor, if you're at the start of your career, then I'm here, let me know. And I got one of my friends contacted me and she completely called me out and cussed me down on that because she was like, you're exercising your privilege. And I didn't realise that. And it wasn't like we had an argument. I thought I was trying to do the right thing and it backfired slightly because of nuances that I didn't understand. but we had we had a conversation around it, and exactly that, it generated the thing. And I took the tweet down, and I didn't take the tweet down. I left the tweet up because I wanted it to be up there, and I clarified that I'd been called out on it, because you can just be honest and transparent. But it started a discussion. I learned something from it. She understood that I was coming from the right place, but perhaps it, just balls it up a little bit. But it's that kind of thing. And I think as long as you don't charge in and say, like, I'm the best at this, and this is, I'm definitely right, it's opening that dialogue, and that's where you get better ideas from it. And in fact, she's now recommended somebody else for me to mentor based on that desire to help, but it's a roundabout way of doing it, right? And you really need to just embrace being an amateur. I don't know if anybody is a linguist, or I guess a linguist is the right word here, but amateur gets a bad rep, right? Things that look amateurish. You get amateur footballers that might just kick it out the ground because they're a bit crap at it. But actually, amateur comes from the French word, you might not know this, it comes from the French word amateur, which means lover of, right? And what you need to do is embrace the mindset of an amateur, which is a lover of something, rather than a low quality version of that thing. Because then if you love something and you're having a go at it and your heart's in the right place, who can ever tell you that's the wrong thing to do, right? Call me an amateur all you like. I make I make silly songs up and stuff like that, and no one expects it to actually sound like a tune because I'm an amateur at it. It's never going to be top 10 hit or anything. It's just me messing around with samples and stuff. But because I've got that amateur mindset, it's fine, right? I can experiment with those kind of things. I think this is a great quote by this guy, Shunryu Suzuki, and this is in Austin Kleon's book, which is, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, and in the expert's mind, there are few, right? Because if you know the answer, and we're all guilty of it at work, I think, when we've got experience in something, you kind of just default to the thing that you can see is the right answer, but maybe that's the wrong thing to do. Whereas people like my intern, they'll just be like, oh, what about this? And some of the ideas are going to be far out, right? But at least they're like experimenting and sort of embracing that. And you can only, the difference between being crap and you have to be crap before you can be good at anything. And that's just like a little series of little steps to get there. So you need the amateur mindset in order to get there, because if you don't love what you're doing, you're never gonna take that progression, because you'll just bail after the first hurdle or whatever, right? You have to love it and embrace it and keep developing it from there. And I actually think, I was thinking about this today, maybe like it's more important to have the amateur mindset at something that you are, and you do know you're really good at, because you've got both the experience and the flexibility then. I think it's more important to maintain that amateur mindset at something that when you're experienced than it is even at the start, perhaps. Sorry. That whole orange arrow across there from being crap to being good, though, it's like that's when you're already on the journey, right? But that journey is only this part of the whole process. Like, doing nothing to doing something is the biggest hurdle that you have to get over. It's that first time you put pen to a blank piece of paper. It's that first time you write the first sentence of the book that you're writing. It's the first sort of exercise you do, and you write down to doing a workshop or whatever. And this is actually the big hurdle. So I've got another quote by a different philosopher. Sorry to the 7-year-old, which is, if you're doing something, you're already fucking miles ahead of someone who's not. So start doing something. And that's from me. And I think this is the thing, is like getting over that initial hurdle and starting to do something, and just putting, the only difference between a creative person and a non-creative person is the creative person everybody's got ideas about stuff, right? The creative person just writes them down. That's essentially the difference, or draws it. It's just everybody's got ideas churning around. And I think a really good example of this is kind of like having this DIY or amateur mindset. So I'm really into my music, I'm into my punk rock and all these kind of things, right? And I was also into gig. I used to make posters for bands and stuff like that back in the day. And here's some bands, like you've got Nirvana on there, you've got Soundgarden, you've got Sonic Youth. These guys sold millions of records, right? But at this time, they weren't selling any records. And what they needed to do was connect with like-minded people and get their message out there, contribute to the conversation in the way that they could by getting people to their shows so they could hear their music, right? And they didn't worry about hiring designers. They didn't worry about hiring, the kerning on their fonts, or painstakingly trying to line things up to a Swiss grid or whatever. I don't even know what, right? What they did was, we need people to come to our shows. let's get a poster out there so people will come to our shows and then we can connect with them. They contributed to their discussion. And I think even like the great example is Kiss down the bottom there. If any guys remember Kiss, they were like one of the biggest bands in the world, you know, rock bands in the world in the 70s and 80s, I guess. This was their very first poster, okay? And that logo, that Kiss logo there, they were like, right, we're doing a show, we need people to come to it, we need a logo. So Ace Frehley, the guitarist, drew that with a Sharpie, and then they got people to the show. Now that logo has now been on lunch boxes, it's been on hot rod cars, people have had been buried with coffins with it printed on it. And that came from, that wouldn't have happened had he not drawn the logo, because they needed to start something. And that's what I mean about getting it over there. They, like I said, they could, oh, how do we do this? How do we do this? He just was like, we need a logo, I'll draw a logo, bang. And then it progresses from there. I also think a really good example of this is, if you remember when the world had some hope in it, Obama had this poster for his presidential campaign. And that was done by the guy Shepard Fairey. Now, he just didn't leap from not doing anything to emailing the president and being like, can I do your poster? And Obama saying, yeah, right? It doesn't work like that, does it? So he had to go through this process of loving what he did, move into an amateur mindset, and then developing something off the back of that. So he started off, I don't know if anybody's seen these Andre the Giant Has a Posse stickers before. He stuck them all around. This was in the days before the internet. It was early 80s. Mid-80s, but he stuck them all around. I think he lived in both Providence and San Francisco, so he just slapped all them everywhere, and it became kind of like a thing. It became like a viral thing, I guess, before the internet. But you can see it's hand-drawn, it's photocopied, it's from a design perspective, it's like, you know, all over the place. But that caught on, right? Because he put it out there and he was like, I want to celebrate Andre the Giant for whatever reason. And he did that. And that then developed into the Obey Giant brand, which I'm certain you'll have seen, T-shirts and prints and things like that. And it progressed. And it's that, you know, he just started off as a kid with a skateboard, essentially. And then it moved into, then he had a whole clothing brand and a print range and all those kind of things, until he got to do like the president's poster, right? And that's about as big an exposure as you could ever get. And God knows how much he got paid for that, right? But he obviously, that established him then as a serious artist and all those kind of things, right? It's just that progression. Another character that Obama brought a fair bit of hope to the world at the time, I guess, despite some of his faults. But another character that brings hope to the world is this guy. And this guy is my dad. He's the last remaining eel catcher in England, which is, you can see he's a pretty weird looking dude. He's got a weird job. No one would choose, well, he chose to be an eel man, but that's why there's only one left, because it's not feasible on many levels. And he's had a pretty weird life and some pretty weird adventures, right? And so I've been telling stories about my dad down the pub to mates for years and years and years. It's a good way to introduce people. I got a thing, and I got a good laugh from my mates about all the tales of what Dad got up to. So I thought, it was after I developed some confidence in my sketching ability. I'm never going to be an artist, but I developed through sketch notes and those kind of things. Like I said, I got enough confidence that my ideas were valid and my style, I could communicate an idea even if I wasn't going to be a thing. So I thought, well, I've been telling these stories down the pub for years, so I'll try and document them. So I set out and started drawing some comic strips about Dad's life. This one here is, you won't remember this, but there was Tony Martin, the burglar, the farmer that shot some burglars in the middle of the fence. Dad was kind of embroiled in that. He was driving by when it happened and was like a witness and got called into the whole thing. So that was a funny tale. There he is driving his eel van along in the middle of the night there. So that was one of the very first stories I ever told my friends, so I documented that. This one on the right-hand side is when Dad had permission to catch eels on Sandringham, and then he was down the river one day and Prince Philip pulled up and Dad ended up giving him a Tesco bag full of crayfish and saying, like, oh, take these home for your tea, like, you cook them, give the servants a night off and stuff. So stories like this, he's just a bit of a character. And I thought, all right, well, these are worth documenting, right? And the aim for this was to make 3 or 4, or a couple of stories, a couple of hand-drawn pages and give to my mates just for a bit of a laugh. But then I progressed and I was like, actually, this sounds all right. I've never tried to do any of this stuff. I've always been into comics, but I've never tried to do anything like this really, or like a formal thing. And I was like, right, well, I'll actually send this out to some people, right? And I sent out literally just photos of, these are all done on the iPad because I redid them on the iPad, but at the time they were just hand-drawn pen on paper, pen and pencil on paper. And I just took some photos of them, and I decided, right, well, I like the comic world, and indie comics are quite cool, so I'm going to try and contribute to those conversations. And I sent out some of these photocopied pages, expecting to be told, what are you talking about? You draw like a child, and no one cares about your dad, essentially. He's your dad, right? But instead, I got like an amazing response from all these sites. I got like, yeah, if I can look at the email, really strange, really endearing and charming. Like the Eelman Chronicles is probably the most oddball comic I've read in recent memory. And this one in the top left here, he was the first guy that sent anything back. He literally just had, like I said, photos of the pages. Sometimes something comes along to make me fall in love with the medium of comics all over again. Right? And he wrote to me to say, my comic about my dad had made him phone his dad, who he hadn't spoken to in like 5 years. And I was just like, right, that's about the most amazing feedback you could ever get, right? And that gave me enough of a spark to carry on with the Eelman, the comics, because it was like, right, I have got something here. And I could have stopped at any stage along that process, right? I could have stopped when I just told my mates the stories. I could have stopped when I realised I couldn't really draw. I could have stopped when I did the first page or showed it to my mate and left it there. But it was like that natural progression. It's just having confidence that your ideas have got enough weight to them, or they're worth something, right? The world is a better place. The world is a better place because the Eelman comic exists than it was beforehand, because it's just a slightly more interesting thing. It's that confidence. And from there it progressed. So I ended up self-publishing it. It became like a proper book. I had to set up I ended up setting up a publishing company. So I've now got my own publishing company. It's all DIY and this amateur mindset. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. It was just like, what's the next stage? What's the next stage? I've sold a bunch. Like it's a success. I didn't set out to sell any, but when I got that feedback, I was like, this could become a thing. So it was, it's been on sale in London. It's been on sale in shops in New York. It was the top selling comic book in Norwich for 6 weeks run-ins, which is, I'll take that. That's pretty good, proving that it's not really Batman or Spider-Man that is the hero Norwich needs. It's the Eelman, which is fine. And I've sold like 700 or 800 copies of it. And that's a complete success for me. I didn't ever expect to do that. And it's led to other opportunities and other things. I've got my own clothing range now, and I sell prints and cups and stickers of my dad's face. And so he's bemused by it, right? It's like there's people walking around in people from Seattle to Shoreditch to Singapore walking around in t-shirts with my dad's face on, right? That's absolutely ludicrous. Dad doesn't even know what the internet is, basically. He just knows weird Facebook groups where he gets into weird rows about riverbanks in, and that's about his limit of the internet. He's got no concept of it. But it's all stuff that just came off, spiraled out of that thing. I've been able to, I spoke at Reasons 2 a few years ago. I spoke to 400 people on the biggest screen I've ever been in front of, just with pictures of my dad behind, and am I ever, I'm never going to be able to retire on the money I made from the Eelman, but it's a success in the framework of it. It's just from that, adopting that amateur mindset and being open to putting an idea out there and seeing what happens. That's progress. One downside of it is that you might get a stalker. So these two guys, this happened, when did this happen? Last year. I started getting blackmailed and harassed by these two guys who think somehow me and my dad are involved in a giant police cover-up about Tony Martin, and it's all a stitch-up, and there's government and the MI5 are involved and all this kind of stuff. And they were roaming around. I had to get the cops involved, and I had a detective where it was her last case before retirement, and it was a bit of a crazy time that you couldn't make it, but that will make a good story. So I just started doing it. He's called Pede. I started doing a comic book on him, and he's weird. They were roaming around the fens, like busting into post offices, demanding to know where me and my dad were and stuff. It was a bit strange. 90% hilarious, 10% slightly disturbing, but there's a story in there that I can use in that. And the way I've been doing similar things in, so that's, you know, the kind of story of the Eelman. And the way I've been doing similar things in lockdown is I love going for walks, and I also love folklore, and I've had that on my mind for ages. So we don't have a garden or anything like that. So we've been really dedicating our time, and the weather's been nice. So we go and explore. I do a bit of research beforehand, and we go and explore Norfolk folklore sites. You know, get a lovely walk out in the countryside. I love walking around Norfolk, take some nice pictures. Hopefully, I'm trying to improve my photography skills. That's a bit filter heavy, but whatever. And then documenting the story behind it. So that tree there, that's a ruin. That's actually a witch's wooden leg. She got burnt in the church, or killed in the church and buried under it, and her leg grew out, and that tree collapsed the roof on top of the people that had condemned her and stuff. So I love all of that sort of stuff. And I'm working on at the minute, like a whole set of these folklore things. So I've got about 15 done, and hopefully that will become a book as well, similar to the Eelman, that kind of thing, right? And the Eelman isn't the best comic book in the world. You've got to be realistic about this sort of stuff, right? And maintain a level of just kind of perspective. And this won't be the best folklore book in the whole world, right? And that's, you know, they're not like The Dark Knight. I'm no folklore scholar. I just like the stories, and I like drawing witches and devils and churches and stuff, right? But that's fine. You just got to be comfortable with that, because 90% of everything is shit anyway. So, like, if he gets away with it, but yeah, so why can't I, basically? Like, as long as he's banal and half, you know, not half, but banal, boring, and just pretty dull. I'd like to think mine aren't that, but if they are, that's fine. And what I mean by 90% of everything is shit anyway is, A, it's true. If you actually objectively look at, everybody's got their own tastes, right? You look at your TV shows you like, you probably only like 10% of what's on telly, or 10% of films, or 10% of bands, or whatever. But that doesn't matter, right? Because you don't need to appeal to everybody, do you? It's that, I think that is also a stumbling block for people. They need to think like, I need to make the most mass market thing, and you don't end up having a viewpoint or an opinion, or there's no personality into it, because you're trying to please everybody all the time. All I care about is the 10% of people that don't think the Eelman is shit, and I'll have a chat with them, right? I don't care about if someone's the biggest fan of, I don't even know what, Celebrity Love Island, whatever, any of those kind of things, right? They might not like the Eelman, and that's absolutely fine, because I didn't write it for them. I wrote the Eelman for the people who will like the Eelman, mostly myself, and then if anybody else likes it off the back of that, then that's a benefit anyway, right? It's just like, it's that kind of thing. Like, find your tribe and find your community and connect with those people that actually care about it. But you'll never find those people if you don't share anything and go through that process, right? You have to find those people. So you should try new things, right? I think trying new things is a really important step, because it might be, obviously I default to kind of drawing or writing, but that might not be your thing. Your thing might be YouTube videos, or podcasts, or skill share classes, or I don't know, anything, standing up, but you need to try them in order to find out what you do, right? And people so often is like, oh, I don't know how to do that, so they don't do it, and then they'll never know. That could actually be the thing that launches something else off the back of it, right? I think you just have to find the right medium, and you have to experiment. Sometimes you hate it. I can only write blogs. I do write a few blogs, but I can only write blogs when I'm really, really in the mood for it, and I'll just bash it out in one go. I haven't got the patience to sit there and craft perfect sentences. It's almost like I've got a message. I think this will be useful. I'm just going to get it out. And if you read any of my blogs on Medium or whatever, there'll be grammatical errors, and I'll say, oh, here's 10 tips about something, and there'll actually only be 9 or 11 because I've counted wrong. Those kind of things. But I think it comes from an authentic and honest place that I've tried it and I've got a message to say. So it's like, if you're going to pick me up on those things, that's cool. But hopefully you can see that it's coming from the right place of trying to help somebody. That's basically where I'm coming from. And hopefully that comes through in the thing. And I also think trying new things is also good, because it's just like, once a thing is done, I can't, like I said, I'll just bash it out. I can't be asked, basically, is the right answer. I would rather get that out the way and make something else than I would spend ages crafting over a thing. Obviously that changes with work and, like, you know, what you're getting paid for, but certainly in terms of like personal projects, it's just like get it done and then get the next thing done. but even in work, right? Everybody says it's all over Twitter. Done is better than perfect, right? You can perfect stuff, or if you never put a design in front of someone for research because you're waiting to get it perfect, then you're going to have worse feedback than if you took them on the journey with the low fidelity stuff anyway. If you put some person out there, you might get laughed at, right? I can remember with the Eel Man, there was 2 guys from like Utah who were just stoned, like really stoned kind of gangster sounding people. They did a podcast review of it and they didn't get it at all. And you might get mocked for it, but when you're on your deathbed, am I going to care what 2 random stoners from Utah thought about a comic book about my dad? No, I'm not. It's just like, fine, knock yourself out. You're not part of the 10% that I named before. I also find it useful to say you're a thing and then do the thing that thing does, and then you'll become that thing. It sounds kind of obvious, but I started it with sketch notes when I first joined Twitter, when I wanted to do sketch notes. And I was like, what do I do? I don't even know what I put in this, what I put in my bio. So I was like, well, I'll put that I do sketch notes. And then if I do sketch notes, then I'll be a sketch noter. So I kind of did that. And also even UX, right? It's like I did UX for a long time without knowing it was called UX because I just wasn't exposed to it. But it turns out that's what I was doing. Just seemed to make sense. And then I was like, right, well, I want to formally transition, you know, I want my career to formally go in the direction of UX. So I was like, right, well, I'll just write that I do UX. And then if I do things like speak to people and find out what they want and then make things that are, then, lo and behold, I'm a UXer. And now, like, you know, I'm a senior designer at Redgate, whatever. It's just like, I find it almost like making a promise to the universe because you've put it out there. And I kind of feel like I'm not spiritual in the slightest. And Twitter's probably the least spiritual place you can go. But it's almost like I've put something out there, so now I almost have to hold myself accountable to do it, and I'll have a go at it, and some will take longer than not. But it's almost like it's almost like you're committing to do something. I think that takes you a long way as well. One of the things is, as I said, we all work under NDAs and stuff, so you might not be allowed. Your employer might be, we've got commercial sensibilities, you can't share your work or anything like that you're working on, because, we've all worked for clients like that, at least even if you're not in-house. I'm quite lucky where I'm at the minute in that they've got a kind of principle of being open about the work that we're doing and stuff. But, you work for some clients that are just like, no, this is top secret, you can't do it. But there is actually, and that has repercussions, right? It has repercussions if you work for an agency that could lose the agency, the business. It could even, if you've signed an NDA and try and share anything, it could also be legal troubles, right? You might lose your job or you could get sued, all those kind of things. But there is actually a way around it. And that's through focusing on your process and not the final product, right? The client or your employer might own the final product, but they don't own your process of doing it. Your process is unique, and it's how you tackle things, and it's how you solve problems, and that is yours. I absolutely fundamentally believe that. That's not theirs. I'm working for you. I'm working for you in order to deliver what you want, but the way I get to it is mine. That's why you hired me, because I've got my own way of doing that. And I think you can and should own that. They don't own how you work. And kind of like, even if you take like the Mona Lisa, right? Also, there's an element to this in that the client cares about the final product, and your employer might care about the final product, but actually, like, do you care about the final product? Like, he spent a lot of time on this, I guess, but it kind of leaves me a bit cold. It's not my style. It just looks like a nice painting to me, right? But to get to that nice painting, he had to choose where he was going to set the location. He had to choose the canvas it was on. He had to choose the type of paint he used. He had to choose the color scheme. He had to use decide which paint brushes he was going to use, how he was going to pose her, how he was going to light her, and even what frame he was going to put her in, right? And all of those, each of those took thought processes and problem solving and decisions, and that's actually where the value is that you can share and help with other people and connect with people. There's communities out there about all of those kind of things, right? There isn't maybe a community for people who like the Mona Lisa, but there's people who like paints and canvases and tools and processes. And that's the bit that you actually care about, right? And if you think about it on kind of like on a digital thing. It's like, you know, we did lots of projects for, I've done lots of projects for Suzuki in the past, right? Doing work on their website. I don't go and look at car websites in my spare time for enjoyment, right? I'm not passionate about it. What I am passionate about is how to deliver that content in the best way, and, you know, through the UX process. But I'm not interested in the final thing necessarily. I'm interested in the steps that it took me to get to it. And a good example of this is years ago, we did, a few years back, when I was at Foolproof, we did the Simply Health website and the rebrand and all that kind of stuff. And we couldn't talk about any of this because it was a big relaunch of their brand and their strategy and everything else like that. And we did loads of work on it. And one of the designers, Luke, he was like, oh, this is such a shame. We could have done this as a case study and we could have shared stuff, but I haven't been allowed to share anything. And that just sort of kind of sparked my memory. We had, I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but that tiny little login icon at the top, right? Just that little person with the word login. We had a big debate about what that icon should look like, whether it should say login, where it should be on the page, etc., etc., etc. Right? So we couldn't talk about all of Simply Health branding and strategy because we weren't allowed to. But what we could have done, there's plenty of communities out there that are interested in icon design and navigation and all those kind of things. And we could have contributed to those discussions and got feedback and like given our thoughts and expertise and got stuff back and collaborated, and maybe it would have come out better, right? And there's no way of knowing because we didn't do it, but because Luke in this instance thought that he couldn't share anything about it, whereas he actually could. And it's like I said, that's the decision of the process that you can share. I think clients also need educating on this sort of stuff. I think that they need to be secretive and protect stuff. I've put this ostrich, so there are commercial sensitivities. I'm not naive enough to think there isn't, but I put this from here because this came from a project where, I don't know if anybody remembers open banking. That was going to be a big thing where banks shared your information and it was all legit. All the big banks were involved in it. But what they needed to do was, that was a large step in terms of, we need to tell the public that we're going to share their bank details, but that it's all right. Yeah, and really what happened there was the banks needed to come together as the banking world and everybody tell their customers almost at the same time in a similar way, with a similar tone of voice, that this is secure and we're working together on it and things like that. But they did. And what they wanted to do, I was working with a project with 2 banks at the time, and on Monday I'd go into the meeting room with one of the big banks and they'd be like, right, we've got 2 problems about open banking. We've got problem A sorted out, like we know that one, but we're really struggling with problem B. Okay, like let's have a think about that. And then on Tuesday, I'd go into the other room with the other bank and they'd be like, we can't get problem A sorted out, but we've got problem B nailed, right? But don't tell anybody because it's all secretive. Whereas actually, it was so frustrating because what you needed to do was get both of those teams into the same room and bang their heads together and just be like, you both need to solve problem A and B together to do it. But they did, and clients being clients, that's the way it was, and you can't talk about their stuff. And then lo and behold, open banking came out, and I can remember the day it came out on BBC News, and everybody was like, we don't know what it is because no one's explained it properly. It was like, right, well, their customers over there understand half of it, they understand the other half of it over here. And it was just like, and I know things like that, if you're building groundbreaking products that, you know, are going to put you miles ahead of your competitors, fine. But if you're doing something that is actually a service for the general people you need to work with, it was just so frustrating. And your work doesn't speak for yourself. Coming back to that kind of final shot of, you know, that whether the Simply Health website or whether the Mona Lisa or whatever, if your work happens to be an orange circle that you're really proud of, right, that's cool. And you just chuck that out there, that's fine. But it might be misconstrued as a sun, a moon, an orange, or a football, or a pizza. It's got no context to it. You've just put it out there. Like with the Mona Lisa, like I said, he's put it out there. I think it's all right. Someone might love it. Someone might hate it, right? There's no story there about how it got to there. And it's stories and overcoming problems that are how people connect with each other, because people have got those same problems. It's all very well being the ideas man who just says stuff and nothing comes of it. And it's all very well showing the final product. But the real sort of value is the hard work that's going on in the middle, and that's what I mean about sharing your process, not the final product. It's like, that is where you're going to be having, that's where you actually care about what happens and getting to the next stage, and that's also where other people might be struggling and you can help them with that, or they can help you with that. It's like, that's the bit that you need help on. Anybody can spit out a million ideas, right? Or everybody can make something, but if it isn't the story to how the thing got made, the story how the thing went from an idea to a thing, is the hard work in the middle, and that's where the challenges are. So you should show what you're working on right now. I've got this picture because it's like, we work in the digital world. It's a bit of a grim picture, right? No one wants to see how the sausage is made if it involves like lips and eyelids and bum holes and all that sort of stuff. But we work in the digital world, so our version of lips, eyelids and bum holes are wireframes and journeys and sketches, right? People do want to see that because people are trying to solve the same problems. And then this comes back to my original point of never let having to show something perfect stop your progress, because you could get ideas at any stage of fidelity that help you or inform you or guide somebody else, all that kind of stuff. Start these conversations. One of my frustrations has always been with colleagues when you say, like, shall we just have a run for it? Like, oh, we've got a spare half an hour, let's have a look at your work. And they're like, oh no, I need to go away and prep it for 2 hours. It's like, we don't do, because like that's longer than we're going to be spending looking at it. And I've never understood that. I'm happy. I take things as like, what I'm going to show you is probably wrong. Help me get it righter. And if I talk to you for 10 minutes and it gets a bit more righter, and then I go speak to someone else for 10 minutes and they add to that and add to that. I've never understood that, why you would protect work from, especially your own colleagues, right? I appreciate there might be a step when you want to put it public. Maybe there's a bigger hurdle to overcome there, but certainly internal, man, just show whoever, whatever, and be like, let's talk about it. I've never understood that, but I continue to find people that are like that. And I try my best to try and break that down. I think you just got to lead by example. That once people see that someone's vulnerable or willing to be vulnerable enough to put unfinished stuff out there, I think it does snowball, but it is always a constant battle. The way I found this out was I tweeted these couple of things out. These were both under hardcore NDAs. One was for final strategy deck, like vision for a business, a high profile client. And the one on the right of me drawing was going to become a sketch note kind of, what's the right word, like a stop motion sketch note animation, you know, where it would see me drawing as someone did a voiceover and stuff. And like none of these, you know, they're not gone viral or whatever, but it's like that one on the left is just, objectively, that's just some black squares on a piece of paper, right? But that was me planning out a presentation. And that caused, you know, a whole bunch of conversation off the back of that about how other people went and prepared presentations. Oh, I use sticky notes, or I cut out the slides so I can move them around. And it was like, there was no way I could ever show that final piece of work. It was a super slick deck, you know, big vision for a big client. But by showing how we planned that out, that started that conversation. That's what I mean. It's that work. It's almost like the view behind the curtain sort of thing, right? It's like people are seeing how you tackle, like loads of people have to make presentations. So it helped people with that. And likewise with the one with me drawing, also we couldn't show the final thing for that. That was internal just for their board. You know, the client team wanted to do something fancy to impress the board. It was all about their strategy for the next 2 or 3 years. But when I tweeted that out, I thought, oh, it looks quite cool. I look quite tech and like I know what I'm doing. So that's pretty smart from a selfish point of view. But actually, I got loads of comments back about what tripods are you using there and what lights are you using there. And I had that hadn't even occurred to me. They were just what we had lying around in the studio, right? But people were interested in that. And that's when I really actually people are interested in seeing what's behind the scenes rather than just the finished thing. Because that generated conversations. You know, can you give us a breakdown of all that equipment? Because we need to do something similar. And I didn't expect that at all from a lighting perspective. It was just like, oh, here's me looking I draw stick men. I'm pretty cool, like that kind of stuff. But it was that really opened my eyes to that kind of stuff. And I think in that respect, the process itself is a reward, whether like going through those stages and engaging with people at each stage. And I think really with the Eelman, like I said, like sorry to flip and change between different kind of concepts, but the process of the Eelman, I set out to draw a stupid thing for my 3 best mates to have a laugh at. But as a part of the process, I set up a publishing company, I did branding, I got prints printed, and like the process of that, ISBN numbers and copyright and all dealing with the police about stalkers, there was a learning process there, right? And which I never expected to go through. And actually now you know, that's a whole other branch. I can do talks on that, and I can write blogs about that. And I've now got a publishing company, so I can leverage that for other projects like my folklore thing. And it's just like step by step, it comes back to that original slide with the little steps. I'm not saying I'm good at any of that, but it's more information, more things that I can share. And I learned so much in that, and that was worth it. So I think you need to take more photos of what you do and just document what you do more. It becomes like a scrapbook. I usually set this challenge. It might be different now, but like when I've done this talk before, I've set this challenge. So like tomorrow, just take a snapshot of whatever you're working on at whatever fidelity it is, and like share it maybe under the NUX hashtag, right? I'm just doing this, and you'll have pictures of messy mural boards, you'll have sketches, you'll have like a Word document open, all that kind of stuff. But it's that first initial step that whatever you're working on is valid, and your approach to it is valid. And to do that, you need to document it. And it also helps you reflect back on the things that you've done, which I'll touch upon in a minute anyway. One of the other things is that I just don't have the time. Like I said, we all live busy lives. I've been lucky enough actually to get some time back. My commute was, I used to drive 70 miles in each direction. So I was driving about 150 miles a day, and that was 3 hours. So I'm actually quite glad of that time back. But we do all have busy lives, and there's distractions, and maybe COVID has changed that somewhat. But, you know, in general, like no one's not busy, right? Or even if it's just anxiety and stuff. And usually I ask people what they think this is, but this is, obviously it's a drawing of some kind. I won't put it out because it'll just be awkward digital, but this is a visual diary from the Battle of the Somme, a soldier at the Battle of the Somme, right? Just some facts about the Somme. There was 55,000 British casualties on day one. They got 1.7 million bombs dropped on them in 7 days. They got poison gas, they got dysentery and lice and disease. By the end of it, 500,000 British people had died, nearly 500,000 British soldiers had died. And the battle lasted for 141 days, and we advanced 6 miles in that time, right? Now, that sounds pretty busy to me. But that guy still had time to write a vision, draw a picture of what was going on, write a postcard about his experiences, and send it all the way home to some village, God knows where in England, right, to tell his mother about it. And you work for a digital agency in Manchester. So luckily I managed to dig this picture out from when I last did the talk. So I always change this for whichever audience I'm talking to. I take a sneaky pic. So some of you might be in here, so apologies if but that's when I was here. But I think it just puts things in perspective a little bit, right? It's like you can find time to share something from what you're doing, because it comes back to that. I can't share anything until I've prepped to share anything, and that's, you're kind of missing the point there. So it's all about prioritizing, and these are changed, and these are a bit out of date because I did these before COVID. But the same people that used to tell me I'm too busy, I don't have time to share any work. You'd go on Instagram, and they had plenty of time to share their face, right? They did that all the time. It's like, excellent, yeah, you have a face, so do most people. I appreciate this might have all changed since COVID stuff, but also another one would be, oh, you eat food, excellent. You sat down at a restaurant, you got it, so you don't have any time to, oh, I'm too busy to share anything. Here's this nice, you know, whatever risotto that I'm eating in some restaurant. One of my favorites has always been this, which is started to come back this weekend. It's just like a beer on a nice one. You've just shown to me that you're able to queue for a short period of time before performing a really basic transaction. I have never, ever understood taking a picture of a pint, ever. It just baffles me. What do you do? That's what I'm interested in. Or what do you think? I don't care. I can go buy a pint and stick it on a table and take a picture. That's one thing I never understand. I do get rinsed, especially in COVID. I've got on my walks around Norfolk, I have got a habit now of taking pictures of cows. That seems to be a common theme. And my mate always, he's just like, you just think you're cool, you're sticking an Instagram filter on a cow. So maybe I'm as guilty. But I'd like to think something comes off of that. This was written before cow pictures came about. But I mean, yeah, what do you actually do, or what do you think, or what do you believe in anything, or whatever? You can capture, I don't care who you are, you can capture one thing that you're working on or thinking or creating every single day, right? And if you catch one thing a day, in a month you'll have 30 things, and in a year you'll have 365 things, right? So it's a constant building up of a library of stuff that you can reflect back on. Austin Kleon calls this like flow and stop. So less so now, because I think there is a need for kind of frivolness in this new world in which we live, because I think a entertaining distraction is sometimes as valuable as a constructive thing now, because we need a bit of respite from the bin fire, like I said earlier. But it's almost like if you capture one thing you're working on in a day, what it shows is, I accidentally hit the wrong thing there, but never mind. What it shows is that you're working on different stuff and thinking about different things. So if you imagine this color coded, maybe the blue ones for me are UX, and the green ones are comic books, and the orange ones are whatever, folklore, whatever. It doesn't matter what the things are, right? But over time, you'll start to see patterns appear in what you're documenting, because it's almost like you're keeping a diary of the things that you're working on. And then when you've got enough of those, you can sort of start to see patterns. It's a bit like, UX research. You start to see patterns in what you've been thinking about and what you've been doing, and then that allows you to sort of reflect on them, collect them and organize them, and then that results in something else coming out the back of it. So maybe it changes it from just tweets to a blog or a talk or whatever else. I realized this when I tweeted these out, my top 10. I thought, this was just done in a lunch break in like 10 minutes, right? It was like, I sketch, I do UX, I use sketching in UX a lot, so I'll just throw this out there. I just drew them on like scraps of paper, put them out there. I got quite a nice response to that, and it started to generate some conversation. So I was like, actually, people were like, it lacked a bit of context, because I was just doodling in my lunch break, basically. And then I thought, well, actually, people are asking me questions about it. So I broke them out into the 7 different things about when I use that kind of thing. Here's a sketching method I use in UX. This is when I use it, etc., etc. So it just became a bit of a Twitter thread. And again, that got an even sort of better response and generated more conversations because it had that extra context. So then, there's that picture again, actually. But I wrote then a blog, my Pens, Processes and Product Sketching for UX. And this was the first blog I ever wrote, really, about UX and stuff. And so I put that on Medium. It got picked up by UX Planet, so they put it on there. It started to get tweeted out and shared. It's obviously like it resonated with people because people use sketching. Then it got picked up by Marvel and InVision and published on their things. And it's a couple of years old now, but it's now, and it's not like, I'm not like whoever, but it's had like I think it's had about 150,000 reads, right? Which to me, that's definitely success on my terms. And it's obviously helped a lot of people. And even now, I still get 2 or 3 people a month that are like, I've just stumbled across your sketching blog and thanks for that, and etc., etc. And that all just started out with 10 minutes messing around at my lunch break while I was eating my sandwich, just drawing a few boxes and things, but it progressed from there. That's given a sense of legitimacy. It's given me a sense that like, I actually do know what I'm talking about and this is useful, all those kind of things, right? And it's like, like I said, it's that step by step of having the confidence to put a rough drawing out there and seeing what happens and developing it from there. So yeah, I found that more and more with blogs. I don't know if any of you guys blog, but they stick. And it might be due to my sort of throwaway nature of I'll put it out there and then move on to the next thing. But blogs actually hang around the internet a lot, and people keep coming back to them. And if it's relevant, they will find them. And people seem to like really want to take the time out to let you know that they were useful for them, if you know what I mean. Which is, it's nice getting an email and just some completely random stranger, here's a thing I did, it's good. And hopefully that helps people out. One of the other things is I'm not creative and no one cares what I do. Like I said, this community probably don't have this problem, but there are loads of people out there that do have this problem. And I think this is really sad, really, that people don't think themselves as creative, because like I think I said earlier, I think everybody has ideas all the time about how things can be better or what their opinion on things is, even if it's whatever, from helping somebody at work to the way your bins are taken out on a week, right? Everybody's got an idea about how things in their life or other people's lives could be better, but I'm convinced so many people just be like, I'm not creative, so I'm not valid in that way. And like I said, I think the only difference is creative people just do something with the idea, whether it's write it down or draw something or whatever. It's like you don't just let the idea flit away. You capture it in some way. I think that's the thing. And no matter what you do, right, we all solve problems every day. I used to work in a call center. That's how I started my thing. I progressed in there. And call centers are like, kind of seen as a bit of a bog standard entry level job, which is true. But every time you pick up that phone, you're solving someone else's problem, right? And there's an opportunity in there to learn something, to deal with customer care, whatever. There's all those sort of things. And there are a ton more call center workers than there are UXers, right? It's like even sort of things like receptionists and stuff, right? I think receptionists, that also is like kind of the perception of that is that it's a base level job, but there's so many skills involved in that, from greeting people with a smile on your face non-stop all day every day, to making sure they feel comfortable, making sure they feel welcome, going through all the security protocols. You wouldn't want me as your receptionist, right, is what I'm saying. So there's skills there that are valuable in that, and people can share that out. And I think, like I said, we're quite lucky at Redgate because we do have quite open stuff, but people tend to focus on, this is what we do, so this is where we should focus, whatever our marketing efforts and things like that. But actually, every business covers a wide range of stuff, and Redgate's pretty good at a lot of stuff, right? It's got its faults like everywhere has, but it's pretty good at a lot of stuff. But it's actually, why not, instead of being, we're the best database software creators, why not actually be like, we're one of the best companies, and here's why, because it's the sum of all these parts, and we can share information about these parts. And why not encourage people who aren't traditionally creative to launch content and do blogs and things like that, right? Because, like I said, there's a load more receptionists than there are UXs, so maybe there's something we can learn, we can teach or share to generate a conversation about that, because I think it's a big shame that a big swathe of the population doesn't think they're creative and their ideas aren't valued, because that is the springboard to launching into other stuff. Right? And a lot of stuff about these kind of call center jobs or whatever might be common sense. We all know common sense isn't that common, right? And if you're on the second, whatever you think might be obvious could really help someone else. If you're on your second day ever at work, you know twice as much as someone who's on their first day, right? And if you've done your first week, you know twice as much as the person on their second day. So there's always something you can share and put anything out there, no matter how much like you take for granted, because maybe there is something there that someone else is really struggling with. Just last week, I mean, I debated putting this in, but I'm not sure if it's really relevant, but I wrote this blog, well not last week, last month, May 29th. I've recently had to onboard a new starter to our team. I got my intern starting this week, but this new starter has just passed her probation, Divya, 3 months ago. So I got, at short notice, I got the job of, I didn't expect her to be joining my team. She was kind of immediately available. And it was like, right, it was the first day of lockdown that she joined. And I was like, right, bloody hell, how do I do this, right? I haven't done it. Like, side by side, I know I can do that, because it's just like, you just sort of they ask a question, you tell them, but there's more thought to it that have to go there. And I really tried to, and I'm not necessarily an on board, right, or whatever. I'm not necessarily used to that. I mentor and I coach people, but she's coming to join my team and sitting side by side to me, and I've got to lead her in that sense. And she's absolutely rocking it, right? And we set in place lots of different stuff. And I then thought, right, well, I need to capture this because she's rocking it. And I'm very proud of all the stuff that's happening in lockdown. That has been a real high point for me, seeing her get on board. And I'm proud of myself and I'm proud of her, and it was a good job. So I wrote this blog and put it out there. And I actually shouldn't have called it 10 Thoughts About Onboarding Designers, because I haven't, in terms of a response, not many designers have spoken to me about it. But what I have had is recruitment people sharing it. I've had colleagues and contacts in other areas of different types of businesses and industries, because it's a thing that people are going to have to do, and they might be worried about it. And I've done it, and for right or wrong, here's my thoughts about it. And like I said, there is definitely grammatical errors in there. And this is alternated. Somehow I called it 8 tips. So the URL says 8 tips. It's actually 10, but it's probably 11, because when I tried to put it in Lightning Talk the other day, it didn't quite fit. I didn't know how. But I think people can see it came from the right place, and I am trying to help. Here's just an honest reflection of my experiences and whatever else. But that was a good thing to do, and that reached an audience that I didn't expect it to in the slightest, if you see what I mean. But all this anyway, I only think you have one job in life anyway, and I think contributing this sort of stuff to communities and conversations is, you need to remember that. I think while you're working in a team, and this is why I've picked this kind of red arrows type deal, right? Every person there is contributing to the success of the team, but they're also doing their own thing. And I think I firmly believe that you only ever work for yourself throughout the rest of your life. Throughout your whole life, and you need to, this sort of stuff about making sure you connect with communities and contribute to conversations helps that, because too many people are shackled by what their work tells them, I think, that they can and can't do. And that's what I mean about finding the process and sharing what you can share and all those kind of things, because I think it's important that you need to remember that you've got that red stripe there of the thing. And it's, you as an individual are always more important than a business to me, anyway, if you know what I mean. And I think people get a bit stuck in the trap sometimes of that. And that might be coming from a place of privilege, I totally accept that. But because, you know, people have different circumstances and all that, and I get that. But what really changed my mindset, I've been made redundant at short notice, I've had contracts cancelled at short notice, all those kind of things. And the way I've kind of mentally coped with that, because I had a friend made redundant the other day from a job he'd worked at like 14 years, and he took it super personally, and, you know, it really did kind of hurt him, because he's invested so much in that. But you need that element of separation, I think. So what's always helped me out is I don't work for anybody, I work with somebody while it's mutually beneficial for us both. That's the way I see it, and that mindset has really helped. And I think that's made me more resilient. But it's obviously going to suck if you get made redundant, right? There's no denying that. But it gives you that bit of resilience that actually I'm working for myself, so the next thing. And I don't know how to say his name. He's recently just released a book on like remaining employable. He's a bit more focused and professional about all this kind of stuff. I got it the other day. It's like, have a point. Mine's a bit all over the place. Here's a comic book about an eel man, and here's some UX stuff. But I read that, and it's kind of about narrowing it down to making sure that you are employable as a person all the time, not necessarily the thing. I just think that's important, especially now, because who knows what's going to happen towards the end of the year, right? And I also think, never kind of hide who you are, right? You like cool stuff, so that plays a part in it. I like comic books, I like weird bands, I like stupid toys, I like walking around Norfolk, I like ruins, I like drawing, I like Jack the Ripper, blah, 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 right? I like all these things, and I'm convinced, this might be wrong, but I'm convinced that all of my influences give me a perspective on the work that I do that is unique, and you shouldn't ever lose that to be diluted down. And I apologise if anybody has one, but when people have like, oh, should we connect on Twitter? Yeah, cool. Oh, well, I'll send you, I won't send you my personal one because that's a bit thin. I'll send you my professional Twitter. It's like, I am what I am, and if you don't like it, all informs the other. So my work informs my interests, so my interests inform my work. And if I guess it comes back to that 90% of everything shit. It's like, you can take what's good and what's bad out, but it's so intertwined that it's me, right? So you either get me in my work or you don't. But even if you like my work, that comes from who I am. So how can you separate it? But I appreciate some people are under that, like, you know, these views do not represent those of my employers. I don't put that because it's like, of course they don't. Because, but it's like that will probably hinder me in the long run. But I feel quite passionately about it. It's like, no, I can't cope with that sort of stuff. And I think in order to be authentic and vulnerable, and if any of you do follow me on Twitter, it's all over the place, right? But at least it's me. I think it's fair to say, yeah. And it's like, I think a great way to start these contributions, if you are new to social or worried about how to do it, is sharing other people's stuff. People generally appreciate that. You know, everybody has to shout for their own sort of space, or, you know, you put it out there for a reason, right? And there is I put things out there to try and help people, but there is obviously some kind of ego thing there, else you wouldn't do it at all, right? That's natural. You put in your ideas out there. But so when other people, when it resonates with people and they share it, that's such a nice feeling that it's like, and people appreciate that, and that's a good way to start getting into conversations, like whether it's sketchnotes or UX. You know, you join that community, you follow that hashtag, you're like, this is cool, I like this because of this, etc., etc. You know, and I'm a big fan of supporting independent bands and stuff because that informs what I'm into. So like, I try and always promote the stuff that I like. It's so easy to snipe at stuff that you don't like, and I'm guilty of it at times. Usually around this time of the week when Prime Minister's Questions has come out, I'm quite guilty of writing angry tweets. But it's like, actually try and promote things that you like, and that's almost what I mean about like taking stuff back from the Nazis and the racists and the dickheads. It's like, actually, if we all promote cool stuff and people whose hearts are in the right place and making cool stuff, then that's good. And then 30% of your work, I think this works as like a nice ratio, right? It's not any sums. I don't know any metrics. I haven't done any analytics on it, but it's just gut feeling. If you share other people's stuff, then you'll make connections. If you then share your stuff, your connections will see your stuff. And if you never lose the authentic part of the 10% that is who makes you who you are, then that's authentic and vulnerable. And I think that's what you need to do to make connections, especially so now in this world. It's all about just creating a library of you, piece by piece. You're sort of creating it step by step, little snippets of work. Like I said, that flow and that stock and stuff. And you can scroll back down your timeline. You can see your progression in your career. You can see your progression, how you've matured as a person, all those sort of things. And it's just like, it also gives you stuff to draw upon. Like, oh, someone might mention something that either you disagree or agree with. And it's like, actually, I was thinking about that. What do you think about this? Let's start the conversation. Here's a tweet from 6 months ago. Oh, what did you think about, let's have a chat about that sort of stuff. Sorry, nearly there, not too much further to go. One of the key things is to be patient as well. It does take time to connect. One of the funniest things I've ever seen was my old colleague Pete, who's a shit-hot visual designer. And I was like, you need to get online, people need to see this sort of stuff, right? So he was like, right, he was arguing about it for a while, and he was like, right, I'm going to put this out there. So he sent his first tweet at about 10 in the morning, and then like by 1 p.m. he was just like, oh, this is nonsense, like no one's seen it, no one's liked it, rah, 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 rah. And it was like, well, you've only got one follower, and that's me. Yeah, no one's like, there's a new kind of hotshot badass in town. They're not like, no one's going to drop what they're doing just because you've posted a bloody navigation menu. Like, you need to, like, it takes patience, and you need to contribute to those things. So you're not going to go viral, and I don't think most people would want to go viral because of the fallout that you get from random folks, but certainly not straight away anyway. And it takes time it's almost like walking into a pub and just chatting to random people, right? Half of those people are going to be dickheads, so you just need to keep going and have patience until you find the people that you can connect with and have a nice chat with, right? And it takes time. I also think a key thing is, if you set out to literally expect nothing and then appreciate everything that happens, that will go a lot longer. I think too many people set out with like, I'm going to conquer the world, or I'm going to make £10 million, and then the first hurdle, it just knocks them down. Whereas if you start from the baseline of, obviously this isn't going to work, but I'll have a go anyway, then everything is a positive on top of that. With the eel, man, once I got all the books packed up, I was like, right, I'm going to go seek my fortune in London, right? And I stuck 30 Eelman books in my backpack, like a little country mouse, to seek my fortune in the big city. And I went to London. I spent the whole day walking around, knocking on doors, right? And just walking into bookshops and saying this. And my friend Jane, she was like, I cannot believe you are going to do that, because I would never do that, because you're going to get rejected at every step of the way, right? And I was like, of course I'm going to get rejected every step of the way, because these people are going to be in the middle of their working day, and then all of a sudden some weird hairy dude from Norwich is going to rock up and just be like, I've got a bag of books about eels, do you want one? And they're going to go, no, get lost, I'm busy, right? But they didn't. I went into all those shops, and I got rid of one in some shops. They were like, I'll take one. I got rid of 4 or 5 in other shops, and I got rid of 29 out of the 30 of those books. And then I managed to sell the last one. I managed to flog it to a guy on the train on the way home. So I went with an empty bag full, and I came home with none of them, right? And that was a funny day. I met lots of weird people in bookshops in London. I had lots of funny conversations about a book about my day, and I appreciated every step. The first couple were like, nah, get lost, mate. And then the first one I got, I was like, mate, it was a bit like some crap version of The Apprentice where they run around and try and flog stuff. But I was just doing it. That was a fun day. It was just a fun activity, man, all round. And I was quite pleased with myself for that. The most important skills you got, I don't care how good a designer you are or how good you are at strategy. Your parents gave you the most important skills on day one, which was say please and say thank you and ask people nicely and say thank you when people help you out. It's like I have got way further on those two phrases than I have on my drawing skills, than I have on my UX skills, than I have on any other skills that I've got. Just saying please and thank you goes further than you would ever think it does. You just need to be nice and be respectful. If you ask someone for help and they say, I can't do it this month, then you don't go, wah, or you don't go online and be like, they're an arsehole because maybe they're busy and maybe they'll get around to it later. Just general manners, I guess. I don't know what the right word is. But yeah, it's just, it sounds common sense, but UXers, essentially all we do is stand up in front of people and say common sense anyway, right? Say what's blindingly obvious, but it really is important. Learning and teaching. Learning is the best way to teach, and teaching is the best way to learn. It forces you to articulate yourself. So whether it's writing a blog, you have to articulate yourself in a different way into how you did it. After I wrote that blog on sketching, I became better at sketching as a result of that blog than I would have done had I just kept sketching, because I had to actually understand and articulate how I approach sketching, and that made me realise that there is a process to it, if you see what I mean. I became better as a result of it. You don't have to do public speaking because it is a bit nerve-wracking, public speaking is, but it's super valuable, and if you can do it, I would do it. It's opened up lots of possibilities for me, but whatever, like I said earlier, try new things, try blogging and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, there's someone who's scared by public speaking. I don't know if anybody remembers Zamo. He said no to heroin, which is good. But say yes to things. What actually is it going to matter? And some of you guys might think, you might come away from this and just like, who the hell have NUX bloody hired to come and gibber on us, right? That fine. That's all good. But saying yes to stuff, if you think you might enjoy it, you only need to do it once. People are generally on your side. So it's like people want you to succeed in whatever. If they read a blog, no one's going to set out to read a shit blog, right? People want it to be good. And no one comes to a talk and hopes, I hope that guy messes everything up. People are on your side. So just say yes to things, right? If you want to go on a podcast, I get invited on podcasts every now and then. The first couple of times that happened, I was like, why are you inviting me on podcasts? I don't have a clue. But you say yes, and then you just, I just had a chat with somebody who happens to be like somebody who inspired me, because they're the kind of people who have podcasts. And you're like, yeah, amazing, right? It's like, have a go at it. I'm never going to run a podcast, so I wouldn't know what to say. But it's like, do you know what I mean? It's like saying yes and try these things. My girlfriend always says to me, she was like, you're not trying to progress. She's not trying to, she was like, everybody else tries to go up the ladder, whereas you don't. You just keep going. She called it horizontal burrowing, like a mole man, where it's just like, I'll go see what's over here, and then I'll go, that's quite cool, I'll go see what's over here. I actually quite like that, right? I probably do need to focus it a little bit, maybe at some point, but I'm doing all right. I'm doing lots of different things and enjoyed it. So I think it's important to try those new things and say yes to stuff and see what happens, right? Like I said, what's the worst that can happen? When you're on your deathbed, you're not going to care about it. But also, very importantly, is like watch out for stress, and especially now with burnt out and Zoom meetings and stuff, right? The point of us, there's no pressure. I don't have any. I spend a lot of my time wanting to be super lazy, and I just go in there and sit, and I'll just mong out and play PlayStation or whatever. And if I'm in that kind of mood, then that's what happens. But what I've kind of made a promise to myself in is, if I feel like, yeah, I should be drawing a picture or whatever, then I will do. And it's not that I should because there's any pressure, but actually it's almost deep down that like, I want to be doing that, and I feel itchy because I'm not doing that. So then I will. But sometimes I do just want to mong out, and especially in this world where you're looking at Zoom all the time, you probably don't want to stare at another screen too long. But even when I'm drawing like those folklore pictures, there's a movie on, I'm just sat there. It just so happens that I'm lazy, but I'm also just happen to be drawing something while it's happening, if you know what I mean. It's not like, I need to knuckle down and work. And my picture, it's just like, don't have the pressure on yourself, but when the spark is there, act on it, I think. And the first rule is to have fun. Like we aren't here, and this again might be another privilege issue. We're not here to hate it. That cannot be the reason we're on Earth, is to hate it, because it doesn't make sense. We should be aiming to have fun, and creating something is a fun activity. You start with something blank, like I said earlier, the world's a better place, no matter what it is. There's scraps of paper, I've got scraps of paper lying here, but The world is a better place from a blank piece of paper becoming something with it on it, as long as it's not a hateful message or you're a racist or a homophobe or dickhead or Nazi, right? It's like, if there's a picture, the world is now a better and more interesting place because there's something to look at than there was 10 minutes ago, right? I don't believe it. Nearly there. Not knowing how to start, just follow this guy's example. He doesn't give a shit. He's off, and just do it, right? Nothing's holding you back. It's the easiest one of all. Just take that plunge and put your first tweet out. I'm not saying break any rules like he's doing, but just have the confidence to go for it. He's not being held back at all. What's that? Yeah, just fucking do it. That's the simplest one I can do. And because the reason to start is, like I've said before, momentum is your friend. And once you start doing it, and once nothing bad happens from putting your ideas out there or your drawing or your blog, nothing bad is going to happen unless you're actively inflammatory. But something good might happen. And when something good does happen, like someone comments on it or someone lets you know that you've helped them out of a pickle, or it starts a conversation, you learn something, that's when the ball starts rolling and rolling and rolling, and momentum is your friend. And that's what I mean about the creativity being the muscle, that side of things. But waiting until you're ready. You're never 100% ready. I wasn't, I've done this talk before, or versions of it. I still wasn't ready till about 4 minutes past 6, right? And it started at 5 minutes past 6. At any point then, I was thinking, do I need a loo? Do I need a cigarette? Blah, blah, blah. But I definitely did need a cigarette, but I've quit smoking this week as well. So, but all those kind of things, you're never 100% ready, right? But the thing is, it's like that clock ticks down and it's like, right, it's 5 past 6, we go, and here we go, yeah? I don't know what that is. Your obituaries, this is a leftover from the thing, but, too many people concentrate on what the kind of negative aspect of things are. But, at the end of the day, I should have probably got rid of this, but it's not about the bad thing that's happened, right? It's about all the cool stuff that you did while you were around and the people that you connected with. I don't know anything about wrestling, right, at all, really, other than when I was a kid and growing up. But I do know that Shane McMahon jumped off a 60-foot high cage and elbow dropped a dude through a table. And that's amazing. Shane McMahon's a dickhead, but that is an amazing thing. So it's all about, and it's almost like I said, this library of yourself and putting out there. I want to be known as, well, I don't really know. I just think sharing is caring, right? And spread the love. I think sharing what you are and who you are and what you do in an authentic way is important. And like I said, I don't know the meaning of life, but surely it's like, when it gets to whatever stage, I want people to think that I tried to help the people that I could, right? You can't change the world. I can't change the world as an individual, and I wouldn't want to. That's like weird, egotistical stuff. But can I help Divya, who started with me, right? And can I help my intern? And can they go away from that and remember that experience because I've tried to guide them and those kind of things? And I think, who knows, that seems like a reasonable, can you do it with almost a smile on your face and a bit of a laugh? That seems like a reasonable kind of perception of the meaning of life or whatever. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not even religious, but it feels like that sounds like a decent common sense approach to stuff. Have you not dicked anybody over? Have you tried to help people? Have you generally been friendly? Yeah, cool. Have you tried to share what you know? And maybe if you set out to make £1 million or whatever, and then maybe you can do that in those ways. There's different ways. Can you offer people advice, encouragement? Can you donate to stuff? I just think starting at the baseline of trying to help other human beings, especially in this stage. I'm getting too deep. I don't even know what I'm on about, right? But it's just like, I think that sounds reasonable to me. It might be naive in the cold, harsh light of capitalism, but I think it's still worth trying because maybe capitalism won't be there in the same way after all this anyway. So maybe so yeah. A bit of a recap. I'm not good enough. Just learn out loud until you are. If you're not allowed, there are opportunities for you to share stuff and share your thoughts. If you just have to have a bit of lateral thinking and find the opportunities to do that. You don't have the time, just share one thing, capture and share one thing a day and make that habit. Even if you think you're not creative and no one cares what you do actually know something that can really help someone else out there who's looking for that help. And if you don't know where to start, just fucking do it. That book, again, as a reminder, so it's called Show Your Work. He's got a whole series of books. He's got 3 books, all of which are really good. They're really digestible. You can read them in an hour and a half, sort of things. They're top tips. He's recently done one called Keep Going. That's his most recent one. So it's almost like what to do when things do get hard and create, it's hard to create stuff or get motivated. But other than that, thanks for listening. I appreciate it's all a bit all over the place. I hope you got something from it. Please make sure you stay safe. I'm Chris Spalton on Twitter. I'm Spalton on Instagram if you want to see any cow pictures. Yeah, that's it, I think. Thank you so much for listening. I don't know how long that was.
Thanks, Chris. I mean, you've probably not had a chance to keep a track on some of the comments, but there's been some fabulous comments from people as you've been talking. I think you've inspired a lot of us. I know I've written a lot of notes, and everything you've said I think has really resonated with us all tonight. So thank you for sharing everything and your honesty as well, with how you were feeling at the start of all of this, and your process, and giving us all a kick up the bum to just do stuff. We do have one question that's come through on the Q&A, and I think I think it's fair to say that it's probably one that resonates with a lot of people. So, long-time sufferer of imposter syndrome. The fear of sharing ideas and work is a daunting thing. Any suggestions for overcoming the fear?
I've actually been struggling with this a bit. It was so weird. I had my one-to-one yesterday, and I've been struggling with it for like I said, I think I lost a bit of my mojo, and I've had these weird headaches. So the last couple of weeks, I have felt really, really bad at my job for some reason. And it's been kind of, I had my one-to-one yesterday, and I was coming into it to expecting a bit of a battle, not a battle, but kind of thing. But actually, the feedback I got from that was like really positive, and I think that's because I think always we're all imposters, right? No one actually knows what they're doing anyway, I don't think, and we're all winging it. I think that the key thing is to focus on the people around you, because then you'll develop the trust in there. And I think if you're honest and transparent and vulnerable with those people, aside from the task that needs to be done, you're almost building like a tribe of allies in that, and not on purpose, but just by being authentic and honest about the situation. And I think that's the key to it, because then as a team, you will have each other covered in moments of doubt, rather than if you worry. I think imposter syndrome comes in from that symptom I was talking about earlier, where it's like, I can't show you this until I'm comfortable that it's shiny enough to show you, right? Whereas approaching it with that kind of thing of like, this is going to be wrong because I don't understand databases fundamentally, right? And I have no real, so this is going to be wrong, but help you get it right. And I think it's opening yourself up and allowing yourself almost to be an imposter. I mean, one of the bits of feedback I got was Chris puts himself down too much. And it was like, oh, Chris, he says he doesn't know what he's talking about, but he does, essentially. That was the message, right? And it was like, but I would always default to that, because I think it allows other people to know that's okay, that you can do that, right? And especially in like a senior role, I think it's even more important to see it when the staff do it. So I think A, no one knows what they're doing anyway, but B, actually kind of actively allow yourself to be the imposter and ask silly questions, because why not? It's like, no one can, and I guess it comes back to that amateur mindset I was talking to at the start, right? No one can cuss you down if you're trying to learn it. The only time you'll ever actually get called out for being an imposter is if you pretend to know and you don't. And those kind of people, if you're fronting, no one likes the fronters, and we've all had clients like that, and we've all had colleagues like that, where you're just like, oh, well, he's just reamed off 5 minutes of UX jargon and not actually said a single thing, right? No one wants to be that, and that's a result of imposter syndrome, because he doesn't actually know, but he's trying to pretend that he does. And you just sort of say, I don't know, help me work it out if I'm wrong. I think X, Y, and Z. Tell me if Z should be whatever, M, whatever. It's that kind of stuff. I think you need to be prepared to almost, and maybe it's like a weird defense mechanism, right? But it's like, you can't call me out for being an imposter if I already have. The only thing that can happen from here is that we move forward, because I've already said I don't know, or I'm comfortable not knowing. And I think that's the only way you can move forward. But everybody suffers from it, right? Sometimes.
Yeah, totally. I like to think of it as or phrase things as it being a practice. So I do quite a bit of yoga, and they refer to that as a yoga practice. So every time you come to your mat, it's going to be different. Just because I could do a pose yesterday, or I managed to not wobble and fall over yesterday, I'm going to wobble and fall over this time around, and the next time, and the next. And that, for me, I suffer with imposter syndrome. I do not know a single person who doesn't. And I think so everything you've shared today, I think it's like almost like a mindset shift of, think of it as, you know, the amateur piece that you referred to. You know, it's not you're not amateur because you're rubbish at it. You're amateur because you love doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Reprogram your brain to kind of think about these things, and I think that also helps kind of step away from some of the fear, because it's less scary when you think about it in those terms.
Yeah, I think so. And also, like, it's like, don't be afraid to speak up if you don't understand and don't agree with something, or like say I'm not sure if this is still imposter syndrome, but it's like, I think this, is that right? Tell me, because if it isn't, then I need to know, because I currently do think that. So if that's wrong, you know, and I'm always that was one of the things that came out in my one-to-one. It was just like, Chris has his, and it's also, if you're honest to yourself, no one can ever call it out. If you believe in certain things, I'm always, you know, we work at a hardcore tech firm, and the people, quite often my colleagues, default to the tech. You know, the developers I work with and the PMs, the natural thing. And I'm just like, no, it's about the person involved, right? And obviously that's because I'm a UXer and stuff, but it's like, they need to be told that sometimes. And it's like, you have to make that clear, rather than just, like I said, I don't understand the technology. I don't understand Kubernetes and all that sort of stuff. I've got no intention of learning that, right? It's just like, that's your part of it, but this is what I think, so tell me why that can't happen, because it should do from the user perspective. I don't know, that doesn't answer the question, but it's like, what do they call it? Firm beliefs loosely held, right? So I think this, tell me if it's wrong, but you need to explain to me why it's wrong. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you. We haven't had any other questions, but if there are any final ones, please shout now. Otherwise, thank you for joining us. Really awesome talk, a lot of love for what you've had to share. We've recorded it, so for those that have obviously had to drop off, we hopefully they can catch the tail end of what we've been discussing. Vicky, do you want to do closing remarks?
Yep, yeah, so I think, yeah, just as a reminder for everyone, we are, whilst lockdown's still happening, we are doing our combined NUX talks generally once a month at this time. So for everyone to get information about the next talk, go to our website, nuxuk.org, and sign up, or also keep an eye on Twitter. If you use those channels as well, you'll get information about when we have the video available. So yeah, look forward to seeing you all soon.